Good morning, my beautiful Paladins fans, and welcome back to day number 2 of the Paladins World Championship Qualifiers. My name is, of course, Pretty Hair. I will be your host for this first matchup today. We got a whole lot of action today, and I, of course, brought my British boy himself, Mr. Vox, along with me for the ride.
Pleasure to be here once again. We saw some interesting games go on yesterday. One, best of 3 to the distance. The rest of them, kind of sweepy. A little bit janitorial, Nick. I'm expecting things to be different today overall. I think we'll see maybe some closer matches as the rest of the international teams start to go head-to-head.
To be honest, I think the sweeps in the first round are a pretty good thing, right? You want to, get your predictions right. You got your couple of teams that you think are going to be going top 4 in this event. It's a good sign if they're sweeping their opponents in the first round. That's what I'm hoping for, at least in my picks anyway. I got a couple of spicy picks, though, here.
You kind of need it as well, because the seeding really does matter in here. And if you have some of the best teams going head-to-head in the first round, although it is double elimination, folks, and teams that are knocked out in the upper bracket will be having a chance to go head-to-head in the lower bracket, you kind of still just don't want that to happen. So we got some matches coming up today, Nick. We have, starting us off, Mousesports versus Spacestation, which is going to be the big one to talk about here.
Absolutely, and this is that lower bracket that you did mention. No one has gone home yet, and I don't believe anybody will be.
Oh, well, we will have Sanguine or Ryder going home today, because that is the last matchup of the day, and that is going to be the elimination knockout, and it's really the last chance for Ryder as the SEA team here to make a bit of a difference. Sanguine put in that place a bit by Virtus Pro yesterday. There's a bit of that kind of feel-it-out match to start off with on Stone Keep. Bright Marsh, they got stomped.
That's right. Let's just take a quick look at the schedule for today. Like you mentioned earlier, Mousesports Space Station is our first matchup. We have Zaga Talent versus Sour Team, Cryptic and Armada, Sanguine and Ryder. In the final matchup, or the first matchup, of Wednesday will be Renegades versus the loser of match 5, which I believe is Mousesports versus Space Station. So the first loser of today will play the Renegades in the first matchup. Tomorrow, guys, this is the HRX PWC placement qualifier event. What are they placing for? What are they qualifying for? HRX itself, November 16th through the 18th. Tickets are on sale at highresexpo.com. It is going to be a blast. Smite will also be there, but it is at DreamHack Atlanta. It's not its own just solo event this year, so there will be a lot of other esports, a lot of fun things to do at the event outside of our tournaments.
Absolutely. I mean, this means you got to make some noise, folks. We want everybody else at DreamHack Atlanta to kind of wander over and go, what's all the yelling about? What's the screaming about? This sounds good. We got to get ourselves involved. I mean, we had the Paladin Summer Premier at DreamHack Valencia a couple of years ago, and the same thing kind of happened right then. We found crowds just kind of got drawn to, wow, something really big is going on here.
Right.
Same thing again, Nick. Paladins World Championship, biggest event of the year.
It's not just our event. We are sharing the venue, of course, but we have a lot of real estate there, and we need you guys to show up. Make some noise, guys. Let's get into our first matchup of the day, Vox. It is Mousesports versus Space Station Gaming. Two teams that I think by now we kind of know and love a little bit, but Mousesports have had a bit of a rough year.
Yeah, they really have. They went 0-8, of course, in the European PPL, and one of the big things, folks, as well, is that they played a total of 27 games. They won 3 of them. That's not so hot. And as far as the maps that they won Ascension Peak, Jaguar Falls, and Serpent Beach.
Okay.
And that's kind of it. And really, this came down to a lot of stability issues I found with Mouse. It wasn't necessarily the fact that they weren't running on all cylinders the entire time. It's just the fact that they picked certain compositions which weren't as reliable as maybe some other teams are doing. They played a lot of stuff like Canasta, and a big storyline throughout all of this was that 2 of the newest members of Mousesports, you had Alex and you had Bolker joining them, who performed lights out at a previous LAN, then just didn't really show up too much during the online season.
Well, let's see if they can show up now. And, we talk about some new guys. Let's talk about this man right here, some of the old guard for Mousesports, Andrew Doodle, the blaster for today. Blasters in this event, Vox, have not had the priority that I think we thought they would going in.
They really haven't, and that's been very interesting to me. Picks like Drogoz, we remember coming out of the PPL during the online phase, and players saying, the PGS as well, saying, Drogoz we think is the strongest champion of the game. They just do too much. And although Drogoz yesterday did have a 66% pick ban rate and a good win ratio, they weren't showing the same prioritization that we had seen them during that online phase. It's more about the hit scan, it's more about the Victor, and it's a lot about the front line. So Blasters seem to have really taken a back seat.
The newest member of Space Station Gaming featured on your screen
a familiar face.
You're right, it is Fox. Where have we seen this young man before?
Oh, somewhere it was a little bit free, if I'm not mistaken. Free agent.
A free agent, no longer. Sadak.
No.
Will be playing support for the Space Station Gaming roster.
That is a bit of a change.
They were longtime rivals. Head to head, they would always go against for the the favor of Latin America. This team originating largely from Brazil. and then Sadok's squads from the greater parts of Latin America itself. He was a frontline now. You mentioned he is a support. How do you think that will pan out today?
You know, there are a couple of different roles in which I feel like you can kind of, maybe if you have the experience, slot into a team a little bit better. I feel like frontline is one of those, and I also feel like support is another one of those, because both situations you're kind of, you haven't got the same pressure on you. You're controlling more space rather than dealing the direct damage. You've got less pressure on you to just hit the shots, and it's more about how you influence the tempo of a match and how you influence the overall space control. So I think that this will be a nice adjustment, and I think they've had enough time at this point for that adjustment to at least pick up some steam. Right, it's not like you've had to make a change or sub in a player like Renegades did yesterday, the day of the event.
Alex, one of the newest members and one of those picked up, like you mentioned, had a great performance on his PGS squad. That's the Paladins Global Series. Think of it as a feeder league, a bit of a minor league situation for the PPL.
Unfortunately, feeder league is a little bit of what Alex has been doing in the PPL as well. Still a positive KD ratio right there.
How many games at Knessa today, Vox?
Oh, God, that's a really good question. Well, it's a best of 3 sets, so I'm thinking if we go the distance, absolutely 3. But that's really been the big storyline for Alex. It was his stellar LAN performance, and then just wasn't showing up online, and a lot of that seemed to be the fact that Alex was being drafted onto champions like Knessa that are easily pressured out, and against more experienced teams who, I mean, you play into against Fnatic as Mousesports, for example, and you play a Knessa against them versus Bugsy, who is the quintessential Knessa play in the European region. He's just going to go, well, I know how to play against you. I know exactly how to put the pressure on you, and I don't think that Mouse had the experience to know how to respond to that.
Yeah. Extreme veteran of the scene here, NTB is the captain for Mousesports. My goodness, I mean, he's been around for so long. It's time for he and the boys to get a win on land. This is going to be no easy task. Map 1, Ascension Peak, one of the 3 maps that you mentioned that Mouse was able to secure a victory on during their rough PPL season. This is Mousesports selection. Frozen Guard, Ice Mines, Frog Isle, Fish Market, all of the bans, 4 map bans in total for these 2 teams heading into this set.
And with Mousesports having the first pick, I feel like as well, Ascension Pick, it's one of the less frequently picked maps just throughout the entirety of the global regions in Paladins, and it's where Mouse might feel like they can get a bit of an edge over Spacestation Gaming, just because it's not the Jaguar Falls, not the Serpent Beach, it's not these really standard maps that have been in competitive rotation for so long. And as a result, it also does play into potentially the Knessa, which we've talked about Alex loving, but definitely the Drogos as well, so I expect that to be a high pick ban priority here.
And as we go into the draft, I'm very curious to see, because I feel like we saw a decent amount of double hit scan compositions. I've seen, you know, most of the time it's the bounce. You got your 1 blaster, your 1 hit scan. Sometimes we'd seen the double blaster, but I feel like it's pretty rare that we had actually seen the double hit scan. And is Victor the sole reason for the rise of this style of comp?
Well, see, Victor's a really interesting one, because Victor now has the talent Shrapnel available to him, which increases the AoE and the damage of Frag Grenade in the current patch. And a big thing about this being available is it means that Victor isn't just this direct damage dealer anymore. They're really a hybrid fusion. You run Grenadier along with them, you're dealing a lot of AoE damage, you're dealing a lot of direct damage. One of those can't be mitigated if you pick up Haven or Blast Shields, and that's really important here, and that's allowing Victor to put out a lot of pressure. A secondary thing that I think has really contributed to the rise of this double hit scan composition, though, Nick, is the lack of flanks that we saw during the online season, and now also seeing a bit of that translated into LAN. People just don't know how to play him. You know, SK was one of the few teams which ran a double flank composition yesterday, and besides that, it's mostly about playing this kind of very linear, very long composition with your frontline out front, your damage dealers at the back, and maybe your supports just kind of flickering him out around the middle area to try and heal everybody.
Well, we're seeing 3 frontline bans so far in this first game. Ash Torvald, Khan will all be taking a seat, and the man himself, Drogos, will also be out of the pool for this first game. Makoa locked in first. Victor still up on the board. We'll have to see, because neither of these teams, in my mind, really have not a lot of people do have that, like, you know, that stoic Victor player, that guy that always is trying to run it. So we'll have to see, like, how they adapt and how they work this very popular pick into their selections, into their drafts. Inara will go for Space Station Gaming, as well as Cassie.
So personally for me, if anybody's going to run the Victor, it would be Mouse. I feel like that's very much more within Alex's champion pool than anybody else's here. He plays more of that hit scan DPS style of champion. We have seen a lot of prioritization go on to Talus actually during this LAN so far, and that also would be what Alex could look towards. But I feel like Victor is a safer option. The problem is, as we saw yesterday in the SK versus Kanga set, if you draft the Victor early, you're very vulnerable to being counterpicked heavily in the draft, and as a result, Mouse, I'm expecting them to kind of lead with what we know they do. they love this double frontline composition, this double frontline, double damage. But it's the Willow that does come on through. Early prioritization for Andrew Doodle, and with one of the other primary blasts in Drogo's being off the table, Nick.
Leon is still open, and she has tended to be a pretty good answer to Willow. Ying is off the board as well. So with the support conversation still on the table for SSG, and specifically centered around their newest support, Sadak, I mean, what will he prefer? What will he want to go to?
It's going to be Maldamba after this point. We have seen only one other support drafted, I think, other than Maldamba and Ying this entire land, and that was Grok. And that was because Grok was picked up and played as a secondary damage dealer.
A little bit of Grover, too.
You're right. Grover was actually played, you're right, on Frozen Guard and Splitstone Quarry, if I'm not mistaken there. But the Maldamba is kind of the staple. That's what you see going up against the Ying, winning a little bit less than Ying so far, but Ruckus as well. SSG are getting a pretty damage-heavy orientated composition online. They've got good stability from the Inara, they've got a lot of damage from Cassie and Ruckus, and they've got that counter pick, that last pick left open to try and deal with SSG if they do go for something like a Victor here.
Well, that Talus is still open that you mentioned, Vox, and I do feel that that is a very good counter matchup for the Ruckus. And normally you got to think Ruckus on a roster with Sadak on it, he would be playing it, but no, he will be playing Wakono's chosen himself. Barrack will be the second frontline selection for Mousesports. Pick rate of 33% and a win rate of 33% here. Leon, the final selection, surprised to see her survive this long.
Absolutely, and I was kind of expecting the Victor at this point. Mouse already have some of that utility online with Willow's Dead Zone providing massive AoE anti-heal, but they're getting Leon online as well, getting double anti-heal to give themselves a bit of an early head start over SSG.
That's a lot. That is a lot of anti-heal, Vox.
It's also a lot of healing as well. They've got one of the best early game supports in their composition with Ying.
Hit him with the Grok. It's
absolutely.
time.
They're stacking everything that they can. It is double deployables. The Grok could be good, but the Victor is the more reliable pick. For SSG here, it was going to be an Eevee or it was going to be a Victor for me, and it would have been vice versa. If Mouse had gone for the Victor, I was expecting an Eevee. If they don't, the Victor is open and available. It's great against the Willow and Fae Flight. You can deal a lot of damage. You've got your frag grenade to poke out Leon, so you don't have to take these direct damage matches. You can kind of avoid some of that hit scan pressure, but will it be locked in?
Random question for you.
Go on.
Just completely ballpark. How much of the split do you think it is actually between blast damage and actual direct damage for Victor, between grenade and barrage versus just the good old assault rifle?
That's a really good question. You know, I actually think
it's kind of hard. Like, I feel like it would be fairly, maybe even,
I think it's a pretty even split,
right?
Maybe blast.
Maybe
actually,
even blast skewed, right?
If you hit a good few grenades and good few clumps, it could be massive. But Nick, honestly, I got to give this one to Mouse with the utility-based draft that they got.
So much anti-heal. The deployable Nightmare has kind of resurrected itself here in game number 1, guys. We are ready to get into the action. We're going to throw it over to our casters, Evan and Gore.
Evan and Gore, or Rain Day and Gore Miser. Your name's a little bit more flowy into your actual real name here. Welcome, everybody, to day 2 here of the Paladins Qualifiers for HRX. We are here at the Skill Shop Media booth, Studio 5, and we are live with SSG versus Mousesports, the Battle of Europe and Brazil. Gore, initial thoughts. How do you like the draft?
I mean, honestly, I like the way Spacestation have been able to approach this. This definitely feels like something they've been going for pretty much all split in their region. Mouse,
yeah,
I'm still on the fence about, but that's more just because of what I've seen them do with this Champions all-fall split, which has been just a lack of wins.
A lack of wins is not something they can afford here. It's, of course, double elimination, so you can get one, but that's it. Otherwise, you're going home. Andrew Doodle on the Willow. That's going to be an important kind of fixture for Mousesports. He needs to have a big game, and so does Alex, who I'm sure the desk mentioned a little bit. He was the guy we said, hey, he's got a future with his LAN performance last time in the summer with Clown Fiesta, but now in the PPL has had a relatively unimpressive performance. Here, though, Sadak on the backside trying to make things happen with the Ruckus. Gets caught out a little bit, and that's going to be the first kill for Mousesports, but Ares claps right back.
Being taken down at that moment is so unfortunate for them. Luckily, it's just going to be the Ruckus that takes the fall, but other than that, they're still at least getting a little bit of pressure. Ares does go down, though, and that's going to be a big pickup. Being able to get rid of the Cassie, having the Ruckus staggered out, that opens up a lot of room for Mouse to move in.
And you're talking about one of the better frontline players, not just in Europe, in the game, in Sephi Cloud on the Makoa. This is a dangerous position. NTB's holding it down. Some beautiful skill siphoning there of the rocket boots and the barricade. 69% and counting. SSG contesting. And this is the thing about this point. This is a different point than any other point in Paladin score. And Willow, Andrew Doodle up into the air, forces FRC God into an early barrage.
Gonna come down, gonna be able to get the kill as well there onto Suffolk Cloud at the tail end of it, and Sadak being able to get out alive. Andrew Doodle, a nice grenade in the air, and that's not gonna be enough to take him down, but it pushes Andrew Doodle out of there.
And look at this. He waits a little bit so he can get the reset again. And there's 3 grenades in a row, essentially, for FRZ God, touted as one of the best blaster players in the world for SSG. But this time, he's using the blast damage of Victor's grenade, and it's working out. NTBs, however, survives again with the Rocket Boots bowling ball combination, 99%. However, getting closer and closer for SSG. However, the Sephi Cloud double kill, taking things away, and Mousesports have an answer.
Being able to hold on just a little bit there, Rich. It's unfortunate because he's staggered now, but he does at least keep the timer from moving forward. That allows his team to respawn, but I don't think they're going to have enough time. I mean, FRZ God, they don't really have the pushing power alone to get back there.
That was a beautiful, beautiful point fight. It took about 2 minutes and 30 seconds for that to get done. One of the longer ones in Paladins because it's so wide, and there are 2 moments, 2 areas where you can actually hide and still contest the objective behind these 2 statues. That is the biggest aspect of this point. It's bigger, and there's a lot more defensive capability, so champions like Inara make this thing last what feels like forever. And now it's time to push. SSG looking to defend.
I like the idea that SSG have here. They're getting aggressive. They're being able to hold down on the point. As long as you can hold the defensive line right around the center, it's going to stall out this 2 minutes. And this has been a map that is notorious for a very long, arduous push, very difficult for the aggressors because it's an uphill battle literally the entire time that you're in the fight. But it is going to be difficult still to have to deal with what Mousesports have been able to draft through. A lot of the healing that we've seen out of Ying just alone is enough to keep you in a fight forever.
Tell that Sephi Cloud's having a big impact here. 7-1 on the killing blows. They use the seismic crash just to kill him. And I'm all about that. I mean, make sure he gets down. Send him back to base at least twice here in this game thus far, which lasts about 4 minutes. And been a little bit of a bloodbath, but not for the big turtle. Makoa still proving to be valuable in that first pick position in Paladins Esports. 1 minute and 12 now on the clock. SSG doing a pretty good job of holding at this first juncture. This is really the toughest angle to get behind, to get around. And they've done a good job of having Ares apply pressure from this side as well.
Ares, who has been around for a long time with this team, having a lot of success with them ever since they picked him up. And honestly, this is being clean. Very good shots just to kind of keep concise onto Bs to make sure he can't get aggressive. But Andrew Doodle just loops around, finds a double, looking for a triple like it's nothing. No one's looking at it.
That's the problem. I thought Ares was just having tunnel vision, and he certainly was. I thought it was maybe going to work out a little bit better for him, but you hear the Willow Fae flight, and he doesn't even look. He's so focused at killing NTBs, and credit to NTBs where credit is due. He distracted a lot of the damage dealers and was still on that payload, so it was kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. But then Andrew Doodle sweeps around the backside. Beautiful play from him. We said he had to go big this time, and he has certainly done so thus far.
Being able to apply that pressure. I mean, that is the perfect timing for that double kill. This archway is very difficult to push through, but you get your team up here with time to contest. It's actually going forward, at least in the payload sense, to get past that arch. It allows the team to get a little bit more aggressive, but the ults are going to be coming through. There's a Hexafire.
I don't know about that. Never mind. Sadat makes me eat my words. 2 kills, but they use the ultimate. However, it's enough to stabilize. Andrew Doodle finds the consolation prize of finishing off the tank after he's invested his resources into stopping this push, and it will result in a defense. Sadak barely makes it out alive, but that's that level of leadership, of risk-taking. And he says, guys, trust me, I'll figure out a way to quell this push right now, and he does so with ease, but barely.
We've been talking a lot about Mouse over the split every single time they play. There's a lot of things that go right for him, a lot of things that can go wrong for him. Andrew Doodle, I've actually compared, I think it might have been yesterday, and either some notes I was writing or just talking to Vox at one point, very similarly to what we've seen out of Invocal and SK, right? Where it's just like almost always has a stellar performance, whether or not his team is winning. It's going to be a choice for them to be able to kind of step up to his level. And as of right now, he's been doing incredibly well. 6, 4, and 5, but the damage and where he's been applying it has been the biggest thing for Mouse, giving them a lot of room to work with.
FRZ Gon has the barrage ready. He's leading top damage by about 15,000. That's a good guess. Doesn't know where they're coming from. Actually, he does. He has the Cassie Scout that was used. I thought Ares might have held on to that for a little while longer. But they start off the round with it. And now the barrage here, they know they've basically done the do-si-do here on Ascension Peak, and they force Mousesports into their own defensive half. And this is looking really good for the rest of SSG. They finish off the turtle. Ares with a double, and Brazil is off to the races.
And just perfect usage. That barrage comes through. He hits one shot, finds out, well, there's no way I'm going to be able to move around this statue in time. You cancel it. He retains 40%, so you can charge that up a little bit quicker just because he's starting with such a big I guess, room of error on the tail end of that. And the same thing kind of goes, Mousesports have gone into their morale boost, try to get things up a little bit earlier, but they just don't have the time. 87% already picked up for SSG.
It's a good hold. I like Sadat getting aggressive, but Andrew Doodle with the Fate Flight maybe turns this around. I don't think FRZ God can hang out, and this is what a Nightshade Willow wants to see. 2 in a corner, and he can't hit the last 2 shots. It means Ares and Midtow and Rachao stay alive, and they've still got 42% on the objective, climbing, but there's a lot more to go. I think Spacestation Gaming just narrowly kept themselves alive in this fight.
Barrage actually just now coming out once again, being able to clear some room, but not anywhere near as much as what we saw earlier. No big kills coming down for him. In fact, kills coming out instead for Mouse as they're picking it up. Cephicloud flanking around the side, and FRZ God's actually in a bad spot.
Yeah, and he gets him. That's a beautiful hook. Cephicloud is just so dominant here on this Makoa. But Mitao looking to trade out a little bit the gourd. You don't want to 1v1 Maldamba, friends, because he does stuff like this. However, Mousesports say, I'll 1v1 him no matter what. Still gets the kill with the help of Andrew Doodle, and they grab the second objective. Gore, what's going on here? Feels like SSG are so close, yet so far at the end of the day.
It has a lot of feeling to me of kind of like scurrying when you get scared, right? They get in there, they have a plan the first fight, and they know what to do. And then maybe they get a little too aggressive, or they fall back too far. They retreat a little too much. Or in bad positions. I mean, there were 3 people in one area. Like you said, I mean, you called it 2 people in a corner. That's exactly what Willow wants. Don't group up like that. Group up in different areas.
When you put it that way, I mean, they could have won this fight a little harder, right? I mean, if Andrew Doodle just hits those 2 shots, they're both dead, and now that's a clear Mousesports victory. So, in my testament, I think Mousesports have definitely got the better hand of SSG over the course of this game. The Victor pick doing a lot of damage, but he's not confirming kills. The way that this Nightshade Willow is, as you see, Andrew Doodle is just so deadly. And Cephicloud, MVP for me, he is just absolutely dominant in terms of the space and the attention that he is commanding in this game.
It's one of those things that because Mouse hasn't been at LAN for a long time, we've kind of forgotten that a lot of these players are really good on LAN, and I think that's kind of what they're giving to SSG right now. Maybe a little bit too aggressive. Yeah. But Cephicloud going to be able to walk away, staying alive. This is what's giving Mouse so much room as well. They just aren't dying half the time.
Yeah, and you brought it up really nicely. LAN resumes, Cephicloud won last LAN in November here at this studio. Our studio looked a little bit different, but his play looked just as good. He was with Virtus Pro at the time. Melvin Path, who you'll know is also on Virtus Pro, that captain, switching out teams. That was when Simsalou was on the roster as well, winning MVP. But Cephicloud was a big part of that team, and right now, you know, a hot free agent, I would say. I don't know if he's going to stay with Mousesports heading into the next year. He's a player that I think top teams really would want. But if he can have a good performance here, there's no saying Mousesports is out of this yet, Gore. I mean, we're talking about PPL stats, but as far as their LAN performance, they've looked pretty sharp.
And I mean, just looking at the members they picked up, part of the reason that their fall split seemed shaky was because, well, you're bringing in 2 new guys. You already weren't necessarily the strongest team. Where are they going to fit? They got picked up because of their performance on LAN. This is honestly what you would expect from a team being picked up for that kind of thing. Although right now, again, the pushes haven't been exactly where they want them. They haven't been able to find quite that spot for the aggression to be able to finally close out and get that solid lead.
Man, Andrew Doodle is ruthless, isn't he? He's just so devastating. He's not letting FRC God scramble away with anything. No damage reduction is going to stop him from finding the kill. And here's just a replay of what Cephicloud is able to do again and again and again on every point fight. 650 a shot. He's basically a Cassie with a shell and a hook as well, and an ultimate that gives him 10,000 health. He's basically a better Cassie. Doesn't have quite the same fall off benefits that Cassie does because she doesn't have any. But
the new fat Cassie.
The new fat Cassie. Yeah, I mean, I think I got to give it to Makoa here instead of Barrick now.
Either way. Definitely one of the
solid
picks that he's been able to. He's been working out, you know. When you run around with rocket boots all that time, eventually it's going to start taking a toll.
The cardio alone, you know, calories burned. I mean, this guy's looking good.
Notoriously, turtles are slow, so we can't really get down on Makoa for not maybe running as much as he can.
Not all turtles are the same, Gore. Don't make that. It's
He's got a mean left hook, though.
He does have a mean left hook. He's got a mean everything, and you can see the barrage coming out. They intentionally are trying to burn down Cephicloud. He gets a Hexafire, too. Cephicloud's like, what else do you guys want to throw at me? And he saves the Ancient Rage. Very Virtus Pro-esque, not utilizing the ultimate. And this is the big round, ladies and gentlemen. Next point. They're able to push and win the game. That was maybe a mistake if this zone turns out for SSG.
They're getting aggressive again, and this is where things have been kind of shaky. Sadak specifically has not had the same performance on Ruckus that we've seen in the past. It's been very successful, but this is just not clicking the same way.
God.
And just ringing his bell. FRZ God is finding headshots left and right. Bees, I don't even know how much of that was his choice. It was just dealt to him.
And look at this. Look at how fast Epic That Ancient Rage gets nothing. Was it a mistake? I think unequivocally yes, unless Andrew Doodle can play big, and he's got one. Can he find another? This is it for Mousesports. He gets it. The double kill. Indy coming big. 15 years old just a year ago, and that year of maturity has made, oh, what a big difference for Mousesports.
Coming through, literally the only saving grace for their fight. Nothing going right for them. Space Station, on the other hand, had everything dealt to them. And it is dealing with this Willow. They have the victor. That's where the pressure has to be. The minute you lose FRZ God as SSG, the pressure on Andrew Doodle disappears. He can just run rampant. And so far, that's what he's doing.
SSG just can't zone well enough. I mean, that's the problem. They're at 99%, but here's what I like. You have a 6-man on the objective. They have to stand there. Mousesports cannot back off, so you know you have some room on these flanks. The Ying clone, however, is keeping Andrew Doodle and Sephincloud so alive that Sadak goes down. The only saving grace is that burst is not used to get a kill, and it does mean it's on cooldown now. So Mid-Tow and FRZ God have a bit of wiggle room. They find NTBs. Now Sephincloud has to rotate into the point. This is where the 6-man starts to really matter. As you can see, just the pressure from the objective being 99-99 forces Mousesports into a little bit of a precarious spot. They trade out, but SSG, they grab the objective, and that turns out to be a historic point fight with so many points of up and down drama. I mean, I'm turning that into New Line Cinema. I'm trying to get that written as a script. That thing had all the plot points you need.
Just what you needed at the very end of it, right? Space Station, even though you lose FRZ God, you have Sadak. You have the one front line left that you needed. Everybody else is dead at this point, trying to get back or respawning. So being able to play that, using their timers efficiently, and just having good health bars in their favor are going to give them that room. Another Hexafire comes through.
Hexafires today?
I mean, Sephincloud just doesn't get to spend a lot of time actually playing the game. He's spectating.
It's like solo ulting. I feel like this is just absolutely purposeful, and it is, obviously, but you have to say that sometimes you look at the team utility of Hexafire, where's the right moment, but they just want anything to get Sephincloud out. This first pick Makoa is so dominant that I will use 2 ults, 3 ults, man, give me all 5 as long as we get him off the table. 1:28 now. SSG is looking to win this game.
Being able to tear through the shield, a nice grenade around the corner, and Rachal's going to be able to pick up Bees. They do not have a barrack for this fight. Sephincloud's back.
Doesn't have Ancient Rage
yet.
yet.
They don't have anything to burn him down, but Barrage just came online. I expect to see it pop.
99, there's Ancient Rage. It buys him some time and a good hook as well. Is this going to burn him? And it does. Sephincloud finds FRZ God, but can he stand? Ares finds the kill. It's now Mid-Tow trying to keep him healed up. Is this going to be? It looks like SSG grab victory number 1 here against Mousesports.
Being able to find it, and that is big for them. Again, this team has been able to place in the top 4, top 5 regularly this year, but they've not been able to break forward. Top 4 is all you need right now. That's where you go to HRX. But unfortunately for Mouse, I mean, they have not had a single win all split. And as of right now, they haven't had a single win all LAN. This isn't going to be the end of the road for them if they lose it, but they definitely don't seem too excited.
Yeah, NTBs doesn't look like he's got his happy face on. Not sure what it looks like, but definitely doesn't look like that. Big upset, I think, for Mousesports. They were hoping to come through and really shock the world here in Game 1, get some momentum, and now backs against the wall. In a best of 3, they're threatening to be sent to the losers bracket if they don't clean it up in Game 2.
My, oh my, what a close one here in game number 1. That came down to the wire, and I really feel for Mousesports on this loss, man, because I have lost so many games myself to that where I just push, fail, and then the second the tables turn, the game just ends in a couple of minutes.
Well, it was a really important point for SSG to even be able to get to that stage of the game when it was 2-2.
That was so close.
The critical thing about Mouse's draft, folks, as we said, it's full of this utility. You've got a Death and Taxes Liana, and you've got a Willow with Dead Zone. They have so much anti-heal, they have so much early game sustain. I mean, by that third objective fight, everybody besides the Ying had Rejuvenate on the side of Mouse as well. They were head over heels, ahead of everybody else in terms of the credits, and then the rest of SSG were just able to get Cauterize online. Big thing for me, Andrew Doodle showed up a lot that game.
Yeah.
Where was Alex's voice in the mix of that?
You know, the way I was watching those team fights kind of play out, it felt like Doodle and Sephincloud were sort of running around together, being like bodyguard. They were getting all the kills.
They were getting
felt
stuff
like
done.
Alex was sitting in the back line, just trying to apply safe anti-heal most of that game. He really didn't dive too often. He did have that one critical dive onto the objective to shut down FRZ God on Victor. That ended up paying off for him, but you're right, he was a bit quiet, and I can't help but think that was purposeful.
Yeah, maybe so just in terms of the positioning overall, but let's look at NTBs as well. A captain of Mousesports, 3-12 and 14. Sure, you're playing a Tinker and Barrack, you're doing a lot of shielding as well, but the problem is you're facing up against an Inara, and Inara just wins that Ascension Peak fight by proxy just because you're able to be a healing sponge, right? And throughout all of that, my goodness, it was just a case of Mouse doing what you thought was everything right, and then Space Station right at the end doing it a little bit better. I think that if that had been Space Station pushing on an earlier capture point at any point in time, because of the item difference, they might not have gotten that through, but well played SSG. The Brazilians showed up good.
You're absolutely right. They did. They shut down that Mousesports backline very effectively. Doodle and Seffi were really the only ones to be effective on the scoreboard. The backline was a bit rough of a story. What a turnaround, though, for SSG. Great resilience shown. A lot of damage, of course. But I feel like that was much more of a team effort. I did not personally feel like FRZ God hard carried that game.
No, it felt like FRZ God was doing what you kind of needed a Shrapnel Victor to do, right? Which is suppress everybody you can on the back line, use those grenades to your best ability, make sure that you're dealing the area damage required to be able to deal with the illusions and the barrack turrets, which then gives everybody else in your team a little bit of an easier time. And that's one of the big issues in playing Hitscan into a deployable Nightmare, right, is that, especially for Sadak playing the Ruckus, and let's talk about that in just a second, not actually Mitau, who we thought would be doing that, is the issue is if you're playing this single direct damage dealer into a deployable Nightmare, you go, well, I want to shoot the enemy, but there are literally 4 objects in front of me that stop that from happening. So that Victor suppression was really the key to me.
Absolutely, and let's get to that point. Like you mentioned, Sadak not on support like he was checked in to be. In fact, on the Ruckus, we even marked on the draft, right? Like, oh man, how do you see a draft, you know, with like Ruckus in it, Sadak on the roster?
Not going to be playing it. It's like, oh yeah, well,
J.K. Lamau.
More fool to be us. But as we head to Jaguar Falls for map number 2, Nick, as well, I want to say that that was a really good decision from Space Station. Maybe that's been the plan all along, right? It's like, if we have the picks that Sadak can play very well, then we just give them Sadak. Maybe comfort is the key here, rather than trying to do anything crazy and force somebody onto a role where they're actually the best fit scenario for a different champion.
Perhaps so. I mean, we didn't really feel rough about either of the drafts. I mean, obviously it did come down to play. If I'm Mousesports, how do I adjust from here?
So the really big thing that stands out to me for Mousesports is that Mousesport drafted a full utility composition and they got beaten out by just a direct damage composition. What I want to see this time is them paying more attention to the fact that Victor exists. Victor is very strong right now with Shrapnel, and if you're not drafting preemptive counters to them, you need to pick them or ban them.
Let me ask you this. The Talus instead of the Leon. I would say that it still brings, obviously, utility in Antediluvian, right?
Absolutely.
But would you say that damage far outweighs what Leon will be able to bring in terms of concentrated efforts?
I think that it would have been a little bit more viable in just getting some dives going through, and that would have been the critical thing here. It allows you to
look at Doodle and Seffi. They were diving all game.
They were diving consistently. If they had one more member to back them up, if they maybe had that true power to lock somebody down, just hold the Victor in place for everybody to rain down hell upon them, then everything could have been different there. But shoulda, coulda, woulda, it all ends up in that kind of talk, doesn't it? Hindsight is 2020, and SSG, as we head on to Jaguar Falls, they're 1-0 right now over Mouse, and they've already banned the Willow, which feels like a respect ban to me.
Jaguar Falls is a map that I feel can go very quickly if a team manages to be dominant here. However, Mousesports, I think, will be able to hold their own here. SSG, I believe this is their map pick as Mousesports did select the map in game number 1. Bans so far are the impactful things we've seen in game number 1. Willow takes a seat. Torvald will as well. Makoa banned out by Mousesports. They don't want to let that one squeak through for first pick.
So here's a really interesting one. Mouse are left with a bit of a dichotomy here of decisions because they can ban the Khan, who has an 80% win rate, or they can potentially leave something like the Victor open and then look to grab the one that doesn't slip on through Space Station's clutches, right? Because SSG first pick, they can only pick up the one here. And we know, we've seen it used so many times. Fnatic, for example, are the perfect masters of this. They draft Khan, they get their overpower online after losing, maybe going down 0-2 in the first round, and then every single point fight, you just ult somebody off the edge of the map and you win.
Victor's such an interesting pick because while he is so strong, he is so counterable, you know what I mean? It's very tough to pick him up early despite the high priority. I'm also really looking at the Drogos here for this ban for Mousesports. And they elect to pass it. This is very interesting with so much high priority stuff on the table. We're being told now it is not a pass ban. It is, in fact, a dredge ban.
Okay, well, that's a little bit
Even
spicy.
more interesting.
That is, oh my goodness, because if there's any map where you're going to play a scuttle spam dredge, then Jaguar Falls, where the scuttle reload just takes up the entirety of the size of the point, is going to be the one to do it. But Inara first pick for Space Station after the performance with last game. I really can't argue against that. Very reliable on Jaguar Falls as well. Impasse is such a critical ability for locking off access to that objective point. But Khan comes through for Mouse, and we'll see if Khan does actually end up pulling a second loss in here, or if Mousesports can use them to their best advantage and pull out the victory. But Nick, this is what you were remarking on.
It will get the Drogos as well for Doodle. I think this is Drogos' best map. You know, he's pretty much one of the strongest champions in the game, especially when the map is playing into his favor as well. Hopefully the Khan can find effectiveness at dealing with the Inara. Feels like Mouse are getting the better end of things, at least in my opinion, out of the gate.
Well, see, here we go. Space Station, they now pick the Leon Maldamba. They know that they got to go for the Maldamba, not the Ying, because you're playing a Ying into Drogos. That's pretty much a recipe for disaster, as your illusions just get burnt to a crisp. And they've got a good solid core on. They've got some anti-heal, they've got some hit scan pressure on Drogos. It looks to me like they're not aiming for the Victor right now because they know it can be counterpicked, and so they're playing things a little bit safer. Mouse in response, I'm expecting them to get, there it is, support and frontline online, go for that standard composition again, leave your last pick open, probably for some hit scan, but leave it to be flexible. Maybe you want to go for the Victor if there's no flank online on the enemy team. Maybe you want to go for the Talus if there is.
You surprised to see no Fernando afoot today?
I really am. Fernando was one of the most played champions yesterday, in fact, actually, was most picked.
He looked damn good.
Yeah, 8 times.
Wow.
Picked in almost every single game, banned in the only other one that they weren't picked in. Fernando was a very popular champion, and as a result, it is surprising not to see him. I expect Space Station to actually opt into a Fernando here. And an Androxus, which is interesting.
Okay, I'm with it. I'm down for this.
Okay, it is the counter to the Drogos. It is the Ruckus as well, so my goodness, it's 3 hit scan pressure threats against that Drogos. That's going to be tough to be able to deal with. I am surprised, though, at the Ruckus over the Fernando, and the Fernando's Immortal does so much versus this area pressure.
Yeah, against the Drogos. And just, you know, Barrick and Fernando both kind of have it, and even Ash in a different way. That ultimate just allowing you to just stall the objective. Just get on the objective, get some space, lock something down for a guaranteed amount of time. Ruckus does not bring that, but maybe SSG's roster just leaning a little bit more towards it. And I'm always a fan of when you lose on something, being able to look at it objectively and say, okay, this was not the problem. This is so strong here. We should run this part of this comp back.
And now it is Mouse left lacking hit scan damage from their damage dealers here. And they're actually going to go for direct. It is going to be a Cassie that's hovered. We'll have to see if that's locked in. It's a pretty reliable pick. There's nothing wrong with it, and it's very valuable on Jaguar Falls, where Scout can be used to kind of reveal where your enemies are, and that's so useful, not just setting up overpowers, but revealing potential ambushes.
Yeah.
Is it better than the Victor in the face of an Androxus? I actually think it might be.
I think it might be as well. You're right. You can bring up anti-flank pressure. Leon is roughly around that health pool as well, so she's going to be just as susceptible to it. Great drafts for both sides. Last thoughts. Who do you got on this one?
I think I'm going to have to give this one to SSG again after that Ruckus performance in the last game.
Alrighty, guys. Vox has this one going 2-0 for Space Station. Let's head it over to Rain Day and Gormizer for game number 2.
Well, it could all come down to this as we hear the drums in the background for Brazil. Can they make it over to the next side of the bracket, or will Mousesports bring this all to a best of 3? It's up to Jaguar Falls to decide. Their fates are sealed with their picks. And Gore, who do you have getting the better end of the draft?
I mean, you have SSG on a map that they are regularly successful on, as well as a lot of champions that they are comfortable on. The only one that's a little off to me is FRZ on the Andro.
Yeah.
But you also have Andrew Doodle on Drogos, and I think that's all you really need to say for Mouse. That is something that is almost always a stellar performance for them. This is one of his best maps, and if he can do what he did last game, and then you add on Drogo's Jaguar Falls, I think it turns it up a little bit more. It makes it a lot more difficult for SSG to hold.
And you know what? I like the Cassie pick as well, because you add kinetics in there and you have your anti-heal. That's something that if you were going to go for the Talus, you would have been able to get, but if you're going to go for the Victor, you don't have. And I think the burst damage, they can both provide it. They can both deal with flanks well, but Cassie has that instant mobility, that burst mobility, and then she can help deal with the Inara, which was such a problem on Ascension Peak. 39%, they've sent the Inara back onto the point, Gore. Things looking pretty good for Space Station. No one's taking a risk yet, but Ares gets real low on the backside, and FRZ got, and Sadak just grabbed 2 before you know it.
Now being able to find the shots. Alex getting aggressive. His name finally showing up on the left side of the kill feed, but unfortunately it's not long-lived for him to get taken down. The same thing happens to Bees. Mouse did what they were doing to SSG in the beginning rounds of the last map.
81% now. This is much easier to zone. You won't see those issues like Ascension Peak where you have to take risks. It's not quite solidified. This is one of, if not the oldest map in all of Paladins that you could play at a high level in esports, and so this is something they're very familiar with. The zone should go well for whichever team captures the objective initially, and that was a very good team fight one. Let's talk about the God, FRZ God. To mention him, he's known to be the best blaster in the world, but starts this game off hot with a couple of kills on Androxus, the famous hit scan flank. How do you feel about that?
So far, his rotations have been very good. And I think that's one of those things. When we see Androxus players, for me, the hit or miss typically comes into what are the patience with your shots? Are you getting your accuracy? And where is your positioning? Those are the two things that will absolutely demolish someone who is new to Androxus or find your success. And he just approaches it perfectly. Patiently, doesn't get immediately in there, but knows exactly the right time to start that precision strike.
He's trying to get those Mutu flicks on. You can see he was going for a beautiful catch of the reversal. Now Andrew Doodle could be in trouble. Seffy Cloud trying to create space, but in the back line, they're getting attacked. Oh my God, headshot for 1040, punching him to the dome. Bowling ball reset. I'm not sure that's enough. And it looks like FRZ God's the only one knocking down pins here. So I think a minute and 20, maybe too many seconds for them to try and defend against this onslaught.
The Cursed Arm up, ready. A lot of pressure being applied to Mouse. They are locked inside the base right now. The payload's coming around the last quarter. Cursed Arm gets popped immediately just to deal with Bees.
Woo, he goes in. He punches him back, tries to get the Abyssal Touch reset, but he can't quite find it, and that's going to force SSG back. It was a good attempt and not a bad ultimate to use to try and get something going. I think FRZ guy was feeling himself. That was a heat check is what we call in sports. Just take the shot, see if it goes in. You've hit 3 in a row. Let's see if you can make the 4th.
And you've got that trade, right? Okay, you lose a Cursed Arm, you die, but you have a minute left, a little over a minute at the time he dies. You force a Dome Shield, which is going to charge up a lot slower, and it's going to be a lot bigger for Mouse, especially in terms of a defense, and you force that out of them. That gives you a lot more pressure. Unfortunately, the rest of Mouse do still have their ults available, and so you do give them that ability to come out of their base, figure out where they're going to defend, set up, and prepare for your next onslaught.
This is a very good channel for Sadak to hold because Midtown has vision on Richao and Sadak. Sadak now getting a little aggressive because he's full health, but he's going to have to drop back. And this is the most interesting part about it. Richao finds Andrew Doodle before he can get healed up. The life exchange was not there. They're trying to keep up Bees with the active healing. The clone wasn't enough, and this is the problem. Now they've lost their damage. Now they've lost their pressure. It's Seffy Cloud, and he has an overpower, but what would it accomplish? I think Mousesports just have to let this one go through. There's not enough burst to change the tide of this one. It's going to go 2-0, ladies and gentlemen, and Spacestation Gaming are 1 capture and 1 push away from advancing to the next round.
They have dialed everything up, and this is exactly what I was saying about FRZ God's Androxus. He's patient. Everyone else is fighting already. You can see Bees was at half health, and he was waiting because he knows I can kill Drogos, and that sets the fight.
It really does. And then they're pincered. They don't have anywhere to go. Bolka trying his best, but it's a hard task, especially when that life exchange can only get to 1 person at a time. That's the burst that you need to deal with, the burst that's being given to you from FRZ Gods and his heads will roll. That's going to be changed in the next patch, but for now, in all esports in November, you're going to see those big headshots make a big difference.
And that damage, especially when you have someone who can hit it regularly, adds up way too much over time. I mean, looking at B specifically, you expect a carry to get taken down, but because Barrick is so squishy inherently, even though he's a frontline, if you find a couple of headshots onto him, there is no place for him to stand. That's why we see Dome Shield get forced as easily as it does. That's why we see the pressure come down, and now they're trying to protect Andrew Doodle.
Well, you know what? I like the adjustment here. They're playing around the overpower, so they go to this left side, and what's interesting is they isolate Bees. Seffy Cloud could overpower, but again, what would it accomplish? He's already half health. He'll probably die as he starts to throw her off. Beautiful touch there, and he's going to get the Abyssal Touch that allows him to get the double kill as Bolka falls off the map intentionally, and that might do it, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know, with the dismount here onto Bees, how they're going to get back and touch the point. I don't think they can.
Every single member of Mouse, except for I think Bolka, just got dismounted, either themselves or tapped by FRZ God. There's no way to touch down. They might be able to come through, but 99 no, they're not going to get back. Mouse just completely, like that wipe, that fight, everything was SSG.
What an incredible display of flexibility. FRZ God, a lot of people say, oh my god, he's playing Androxus. He plays a lot of Androxus. He does. We know him for blasters, but he's very, very good on the Androxus. But to do it here, to do it on land, to surprise Mouse with this pick as well, when they ban the Dredge, and they take the Drogos, and the Willow's ban, and they think, oh, there's nothing FRZ God can play. We've heard his champion pool. Psych. No, he's ready for you. He has the Accursed Arm as well, and he takes Sephi Cloud down with him, looking for another couple of shots, catches the hands, and he sends them right back to Andrew Doodle, who now is very, very lonely. You can see that loneliness doesn't end up working out for him.
This is the flexibility. This is what you expect out of a team that has been so successful, and they've only gotten better over time. They've picked up more members just to continue escalating themselves, and they are now what looks like 20% away from closing this out as a 2-0.
Well, a lot of people at SSG moving on, Gore. I think we thought this was going to be a little bit of a closer set than it was. I think we thought Game 2 was going to at least give us some Ascension peak feels. This is straight up domination from Brazil. Triple kill for Sadak. Aren't you glad you brought him, Aries? It's time for cleanup, baby. Do the dishes. Space Station Gaming take out Mousesports, and they move on.
Clean. I mean, that game, there's no other word to describe it.
Clean,
They just
baby.
come in, they know exactly what they want, they see the draft, and that's part of the problem in the summer split, or in the summer LAN.
Yeah.
They didn't have the drafts that we saw them, the drafting strategy, anything. This time around, you can see they're comfortable, they're confident, they're flexible. Unfortunately for Mouse, that means that they're now in the lower bracket.
Really, really tough performances. You could tell that I think Andrew Doodle and Sephi Cloud. Andrew Doodle definitely disappointed. He had a couple of really nice moments, but couldn't get it going on the Drogos. Sephi Cloud played well, and I think he's got to look at himself saying that I think this is the dynamic we're going to have to watch as we see these qualifiers progress. If Mouse drop early, what's Sephi Cloud's future for this team? He's a very good player. I think he knows it. He takes his headset off quickly and says, all right, let's go. Next. But Mouse all look like they're not in it anymore. Des, go ahead and break down SSG's 2-0 victory over Mouse.
Very dominant there in game number 2. Incredible stuff from Space Station overall. What I want to primarily talk about, though, is the Mousesports draft and how they played it, or maybe how they should have played it. Vox, what did you see?
I mean, the draft was good. It was adequate for the map, and it was counterpicked a bit with the Andro into the Drogos, but it just wasn't executed very well. To start off game 1, to start off the very first capture objective, we saw Drogos playing back alongside Ying with the Barrack on the objective. Now, we also saw the Khan playing a peripheral frontline alongside Cassie. By the way, Alex on Cassie, 10k damage ahead of the next highest damage dealer on by the end of that first round, but still not enough to be able to clutch a defense there. And as a result, this left Drogos out to dry. By a minute and 20 seconds in, Androxus still on that mount.
was funny, yeah.
God
That
sort
was
of running
funny.
around, just waiting for opportunity, dives
I
on
think
in.
we may have had a replay of that, actually. Yeah, he's running. You
It's
pointed that out.
ridiculous.
You're like, dude, Andrew's
Andro-
still on his horse. I'm like,
This is
oh my
crazy.
God, it's like a minute 20 in. He's still galloping around.
We have this impasse go up that locks off Ying and Barrack separate from the Drogos. The Drogos dies, everybody else crumbles. Mousesports needed to start off by either playing the Khan with the Drogos or playing Khan Drogos Cassie as a unit. Maybe stick the Ying in there as well and play the Barrack more as a floating point. And then you just end up protecting your princess. Andrew Doodle, 4-6-1. Just
Rough, man.
didn't have the impact that you need a Drogos to have in a game like that.
He just got absolutely sat on. I mean, he was completely shut down by the second round with so many counter picks. And with your Cassie doing such great damage and kind of having a good round, do you feel like it would have been a worthwhile endeavor to just go all in and invest in Alex and have him carry this game?
I think it would have been. I also think whoever is calling the shots for Mouse is making mistakes there, in all honesty, and I'm happy to call it out because by the end of that second capture point where Space Station Gaming had taken it, we saw in the sunroom, you know, Space Station take control, they stick the Inara in there, it's very hard to displace them, and all the while, before a flank ended up coming through, you had Mousesports sitting there trying to just find their way and trying to look for somebody, anybody. Overpower up the entire time, by the way. Wasn't utilized at all during that capture objective. That's the point where Mouse had an opportunity for a comeback, just immediately eliminating somebody off the map with that ultimate. Wasn't utilized, and I want to know why they held the trigger on that.
Well, questions swirling around. We do have our MVP for this set. Congratulations, the Seal Series MVP goes to FRZ God of Space Station Gaming. Touted as one of the best blaster players in the world, but all he played today was Hitscan, Vox. That moment was great.
Shrapnel Victor, right?
Yeah,
Shrapnel Victor.
I guess you're right.
But this is the critical moment. This is what I was talking about.
Yeah,
Nova Power
look
comes
at
on
this.
through. Down comes the Seismic Crash. No chance to respond because Mouse have just held the trigger for so long on doing anything at that point.
That
The
was
Space
hot.
Station walked all over them, and FRZ got able to find some really tricky flank routes, some great
Loved
patience on the Indruxus, on the Jaguar Falls. One of the best performances that we have seen so far this land, and I'm sure that'll hold up as the games go on through.
It's looked really, really good from FRZ God specifically. I want to quickly highlight as well the differences in Ares' Leon in that second game versus Alex's Leon in game number 1. He was, and at the end of that first round when SSG scored that conversion, he was the deepest member of that team. He was not sitting in the back line just
Nick,
flying anti.
I was going to say the main difference that I'm seeing there is that Alex plays Leon as a backline damage dealer, Ares plays Leon as a frontline, and that's kind of the really big difference right there. It's, we'll just send them all the way and just make them do things. Is one of the big factors that Leon was bringing there was distraction. Then FRZ God comes in and kind of throws people for a loop, and you're getting this massive pinch, so you don't know who you can finish off, you don't know who you can target, you think you got the Leon, aha, Enlightenment, you've been bamboozled, and then Defiant Fist hits you in the back of the head for 700.
I have not seen a Drogos of that caliber be shut down that hard on Jaguar Falls in quite some time. That was really something to see.
Last time I saw a player shut down that hard, it was with Windows Update.
Oh my goodness. There it is, boys. We are ready for our post-game interview. We're going to go ahead and throw it on over and talk to the boys of SSG and see how they're feeling after that victory.
Well, bon dia for one of you, buenos dias for the other, and Sadak, I said you were wearing the wrong uniform, but it feels like today it was the right one for sure. Talk to me about how you guys are feeling after that win, and what an explosive win that was as well.
I mean, we've been training a lot this past month, and we feel very confident. It was kind of hard the first game, but the second game we just feel like, okay, let's just finish this and go home, right? So pretty good.
So how was drafting this summer? Because I remember during the summer land, we came through and you had mentioned like you didn't have your coach present, you weren't really confident in your drafts going into your games, and that affected you. So how are you feeling today? Confident in your drafts?
Yeah, we are, because actually Sadak should come as a coach, so she was coaching for us before the visa stuff, and I expect couldn't come because of the visa, and I will say like, oh, you gotta play, man. So
no, that's too bad. That's too bad for you guys. You got Sadak, triple kill, ending it off with the ruckus, and FRZ guy did a nice performance as well. Ares, you're always that flexible kind of player for this team, often taking the con if it's available, but you'll also be confident on the Leon, and that's something that we saw be a really nice kind of stabilizer for your success. Moving into the next matchup, I want to say Edgem was talking a little bit of trash from Big Egos. He said it would be easy clap against you guys. What do you have to say in response?
let's see. We need some revenge for our brothers from Renegades, so we're playing for Loki right now. So let's see what happens.
Ooh, playing for Loki. Well, we'll leave it at that and send it back to the desk. Congratulations, SSG, on your win.
4-0, easy win.